Yeah.
Sure, you're likely in favor of helping the environment and helping the planet. But if you think there's not much you can do as a small practice in healthcare, well, my guest today is going to change your thinking. I'm Carl White, principal at Market Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency, and I'm also the host of Practice Care. The mission for both is the same, and that's to help private practice owners stay private. Not only is that usually what they want, but care is better when the provider owns the practice. Why? Because that's when they're going to have the most freedom to make the clinical decisions they think are best. It's different when somebody else owns the practice because usually, eventually, their agenda starts to creep into the provider's ear. It's more for them to think about. Let's just kick all that out and keep it private to begin with. My guest today is Tony Schifano. Tony founded Antos Environmental 36 years ago and has been driving environmental initiatives long before the word sustainability was ever even used. Their clients include many of the nation's large hospital systems. Their services span operational initiatives, including single-use plastic elimination, environmental monitoring, and changing culture in an organization to support them, as well as sustainable strategies and compliance, ranging from environmental management policies and procedures to environmental stewardship and lots of stuff in between. Tony is an exclusive consultant to the American Hospital Association, a director of the Green Hospital Initiative in China. He co-wrote the Medical Waste Tracking Act in 1988 and state regulations relating to waste tracking and waste disposal in 17 states and in Puerto Rico. Tony, thank you for carving out some time to come on Practice Care.
My pleasure. Thank you. Good to meet you.
Yeah, you too. This is a big, important topic. There's something everybody can do. We're going to get into that, but I want to start with you, where I start with every guest. Your bio is a bit more extensive than what I get from others. Nevertheless, we want to get to know you a bit better. Tell us more about you. I'm curious how you got into this area as opposed to any other area.
Yeah, well, it was serendipitous, really. I mean, back then there was no prepping for something like this.
Mm.
It was sort of a set of happenstance. I really started as a young man in healthcare, actually scraping gum off the stairwell at Columbia Presbyterian in New York City.
Your
Really
first
young.
environmental act.
That's right. I was definitely in the housekeeping department while I was going to school. Just fast forward the tape. At some point, I was a hospital administrator, and to make a very long story short, I grew up in healthcare, and at that time in the late 1970s, we had our first pandemic, really, which was called AIDS.
Mm.
It shocked the world and certainly shocked the greater New York area, which is where I worked.
Mm-hmm.
The CDC created something called universal precautions, which were misinterpreted. But my 500-bed hospital, in a knee-jerk reaction, like every other hospital in the U.S., just put red bags everywhere. The universal precautions said if it comes from a human, it's infectious. Just assume everything's infectious. We knew nothing about AIDS.
Yeah.
Anyway, what happened was my hospital went from about 10 red bags a day to about 20,000. There was a red bag on the secretary's desk. Better red than dead was the motto we were using.
And the red bag is physically a red bag where you put.
It's physically a red bag. It's for what was then called infectious waste,
Okay.
because we couldn't understand AIDS. We didn't know how it was transmitted. We knew nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody thought if you blew your nose, well, the next person next to you, that person might get AIDS.
Yeah.
So this giant response created this infectious waste volume. And up until that point, when you saw a red bag, you really got nervous. It was like seeing a red Ferrari. But if we all drove red Ferraris, the car wouldn't be so special. And that's what happened back then. Anyway, make a very long story short, I quit my job and got a truck and became the third licensed hauler of medical waste in the United States. And
what made you think to do that?
I don't know. That's a hard question to answer. My dad was an entrepreneur, and I guess I had some of that in my blood. I just said, what the heck? This is crazy. We couldn't figure out who was going to take this stuff. And I just answered the call. And we were laughing all the way to the bank because we were incinerating, flowers and pizza boxes. And I had a running joke that lo mein may look like medical waste, but it's not. And you know, we were making a fortune, and I'm a little embarrassed to tell you that. At some point, the ethical side of me got the best of me, and I I just sold a business, and that business became Stericycle, which is
Wow.
which is a
Yeah.
$4 billion company today, and it has an interesting history. But I thought I would help some hospitals a bit understand real waste management. Before I got my next job, I thought I'd be an O of something, right? A COO or a O somewhere.
Yeah.
And I did a speaking engagement at the Massachusetts Hospitals Association about this very subject, and somebody hired me. I got my first hospital to hire me, and I started advising them around real waste management. And real waste management is not waste disposal. The waste disposal is a completely different industry. Waste
Hmm.
management is a behavioral subject. It's a thing that really is connected to who we are as people, what we do, how we behave, what we buy. It's a very deep and complex subject. And I, I never got another job. That was 36 years ago.
Hmm.
You know, between then and now, you know, we've been affecting and partnering with industry, healthcare, university settings, aviation, manufacturing. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, because, you know, waste is a massive problem, and we don't pay a lot of attention to it because we throw it away as humans. And when we throw it away, it sort of leaves our mind and our
Out of sight, out of
consciousness.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah, but the real issue, Carl, is there's no place called away. There's no place called away. It never goes away. You throw away your Lionel trains in 1957. Oh, what a jerk! But there's still Lionel trains. It never goes away.
Mm.
And whoever invented the word garbage, I'd love to find that person, because it's a genius word, because it connotates something in us, a behavior that it sort of separates the responsibility. You know, we think about it being smelly and it's rats, and you know, we
Yeah.
don't want anything to do with garbage, yet we make so much of it irresponsibly. And the world needs to change, and it
Yeah.
is changing. So I'll pause there, because I could talk about that for a very long
Yeah.
time.
No, we could have a
But
whole series. Yeah.
yeah, it really got me into this place of waste reduction, waste to value, landfill avoidance, all the things that are absolutely necessary in our world today.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and with that, I want to jump into it because our audience is principally, private practice owners. So,
Yep.
you look at the large hospital system, boy, if they make a move in the right direction, you can really see it. They're large organizations doing large things. You can feel the impact. Smaller practices, you know, although there's lots more of them, right? So collectively, they represent a large, it's individuals. So what can smaller practices in healthcare do to reduce their waste, their associated costs, avoid the landfill? How can they contribute?
That's a great question. And certainly they can do everything. They can do everything any big generator can do. And, you know, if money's your interest, money's relative, right? So if your overall budget is $10,000 a year for waste disposal and you could make it four, that's a home run. You know, if
Mm,
Mount Sinai in New York City saves $3 million a year, well, that's a home run, right?
mhm.
So putting that out there, because first and foremost, I think a lot of people are interested in money, saving money. So any portion
It
that you
helps
can,
if you can do well by doing good, right? So
no
yeah,
question, no
yeah,
question. So there's a win right there. What you don't throw away, you don't pay for. So you've got to really create a mindset in your offices. And I do a lot of medical office buildings, to be quite frank with you,
okay,
because many of my large health systems have medical office practices all over the place.
okay,
And we affect those offices by helping those people understand how much waste they're making. You know, if you're bringing lunch in from home and you bring it in with disposable stuff, well, there's garbage. Why don't you use a reusable container? Take the container home, wash it, use it again. Right there is an
yeah,
example of waste reduction. many of these doctors' offices are serviced by big healthcare disposal companies, medical waste disposal companies like Stericycle. They're charging a fortune for these little containers in the office, and a lot of people throw inappropriate material in that red container, and it costs them a fortune to do that. They should really look at the education that's provided probably by every state about what real medical waste is, and stop throwing gloves and tissues and nonsense in a red bag. That inappropriate material there just drives the cost through the roof. And then there's an opportunity to recycle, and you have to coordinate that through the solid waste vendor who's servicing you. Now, I need to pause there for a second, Carl, because
Sure.
waste disposal is not your friend when you're embarking down the road of waste reduction. Waste disposal is Waste Management, the company, Republic, these massive multi-billion-dollar companies. Now, listen, how do you make billions of dollars by material that was thrown away by another person who thinks that material is useless and worthless, right? That is just a wild concept, right? But these guys make a fortune. And I also say that probably they're the least innovative thinkers in the last 50 years. They just want to pick up your garbage, bury it in the hole, and collect the money. There's no innovation around this. So, if you want to start reducing waste volume, the last person you want to talk to is your trash hauler. That's like the mice garden of cheese. So there's no question about it. They don't want you to reduce waste at all because they want to come in as much as possible. So, my idea when I enter a medical office building is I gather everyone together over coffee and we just talk about what's trash. I mean, think about this. You're in an office, you got a garbage can. Tell me what's garbage. This is a trick question.
Yeah.
There are two answers to the question. Well, the first answer is everything, because it's a garbage can. So everything you throw in it is being collected by some EVS service guy, and it's a garbage can, so it's all garbage. The next answer, which is equally correct, is virtually nothing. Paper, magazines, newspapers, plastic, metal, glass, food, all of those things can find another home. You actually don't need a garbage can in your office at all. At all. There's probably a minuscule amount of material like a potato chip bag, and I'm hoping that the potato chip manufacturers start to make a bag that we could actually eat, right? Eat all the chips,
Interesting.
Then eat the bag. I'm joking, but those kinds of concepts are really important for our future, because those are the only things that really you need to put in the trash can. Everything else is recyclable, but the garbage guy is never going to help you do that because he wants it all as trash because he wants you to pay for it, right? So there has to be a collective thinking and awareness in an office, in a building, and it has to be a belief system that's driven by everyone. And to be honest with you, I think this education is necessary in schools. I mean, these are the leaders of the future, and they have to be something different, not do something different.
Right.
And as adults, we're charged with doing something different, and that's often hard for us to change our behavior.
Well, one thing you said in there was, reusable containers, right? So if you're bringing stuff from home, bring it in a reusable container, go wash it and use it again instead of dispose. That's anybody can start that tomorrow.
And stop buying plastic water bottles. Like, buying plastic water bottles is insane. Do you know that bottled water is more expensive than gasoline? A gallon of water in plastic water bottles is in excess of $8 a gallon. So we're spending more money on water than we are on fuel, and the byproduct are all these plastic containers, which they're a nightmare. Believe me when I tell you that more than 60% of the material that you think is being recycled plastic-wise is not.
I got to follow up on that one in a few minutes.
We're overwhelmed with plastic. We can't make more plastic out of the plastic we're throwing away. So how about you go get yourself a water bottle? There's some beauties out there. Spend 10, 12, $20 and refill it and use it again. And that is absolutely the answer. So to help your single practitioner or your medical office building, the roots of it are in supply chain. The buyers have to start buying things that make sense. Stop buying water bottles. Because if you fill the refrigerator in your medical office with plastic water bottles, well, everybody's going to reach for one and use one. But if no more are there, and the mandate is bring your own water bottle, well, that's a home run.
What about like the big water jugs that you can stick a bottle underneath and fill up? Are those better?
Well, those are great because those are refillable.
They're refillable and they're multi-service.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you're filling. I can't tell you how many health systems now have retrofitted their buildings with these water fountains that not only provide you with water to drink, but a place for you to refill. And they stopped buying plastic water bottles. They just stopped.
Yeah.
And it's really the move to make. Now, when you get to plastic bags and when you get to medical materials that are plastic, those are a little more challenging. But I'll tell you, bed pens, urinals, all those things that are made of plastic, they're all recyclable. And there are technologies today throughout the United States that can turn that material into fuel. Absolutely. It can be turned into fuel. In the aviation industry, we're collecting wrap and all of the plastic and creating a sustainable aviation fuel.
Okay.
I am surrounded. I'm in business for 36 years. I've never been more excited by the innovation and creativity in the world right now. That's going to help solve these problems.
So I want to follow up on the recycling thing because I mentioned this to you before we started recording. Maybe it's an ignorant question, I don't know, but I hopefully I'm not the only one wondering it. So the context is this: my little hometown. So we're recording this episode on January 6th, and at the beginning of the year, a new local law took effect that says any store in our town that issues like recyclable plastic bags, like at a grocery store or wherever, they now have to charge 10 cents per bag to us. And I never really have a problem with it, but the cost, whatever. But the rationale was we want to reduce the use of these bags to begin with. And my first thought was, but they're all recyclable. And all I can tell you is I throw them all in the recycling. In fact, we reuse some of them with our dogs. So I'm like, I don't understand. If they're all recyclable and I stick them in the recycling bin, why isn't that taking care of it? Why do we now need to reduce the use of something that's recyclable to begin with?
Because recycling, I would say, again, more than 50% of the material that you think is being recycled is not.
Why?
Recycling,
it's the biggest whatever. Like, what the heck?
There's not a home for it. There's not enough technology. Keep in mind that the waste disposal industry, the least innovative in the group, they don't even know what to do with this. I mean, I'm personally being asked to manage more than 700,000 tons of plastic that they don't have a home. Unless we can feed some technology that's going to turn that into a value, we don't need any more plastic. So we have to stop using it. Now, understand that when you were young, you would go to a store and there'd be paper bags or plastic bags, your supermarket. Then one day it stopped. And
then paper bags were recyclable too. What about them?
Well,
they're all recyclable and we can't use them without paying 10 cents.
Absolutely. And you need to bring your own bag. It's like bringing the reusable food container. And trust me, I understand the discomfort, but it's more uncomfortable when you get there and you don't have a bag. And that'll only happen to you once or twice. It actually happened to me 30 years ago in Austria. And without getting into a big story, the Europeans are far more advanced than we are in this. I mean, in Japan, there are 7 containers in every location. The kids are cleaning their own schools. This is an amazing culture that really segregates waste material, and we're very far behind. But while it's a little uncomfortable because you want to be served when you're there because we're accustomed to it. Now, in my town, I would say every single car has bags in it. I mean, I wouldn't dare go to my supermarket without my own bags, period. And I feel pretty good doing it. I don't need that plastic
So, I mean,
bag.
I get that, but we all think that's all getting recycled. or
Yeah.
that the capacity is there, I guess, but it's how long has it not been there?
Oh, it's not been there for quite some time. I would venture to guess that in my lifetime, maybe within the next 10 years, recycling will just not happen. It will just go away. What we need to do is turn waste to value. We need
Hmm.
to turn waste material into something, heat something else. And
Hmm.
now, again, in Europe, they're doing this marvelously. In Sweden and Finland, they have technology. They're heating their countries from waste.
Hmm.
And that's brilliant. We're not doing that. I just came back from Milan and I saw a technology that just turns everything into this cotton fiber, and it could be blown right into a boiler. So in a hospital, in a university, you can take all of your waste, everything, and just turn it into a heat source. And that's the future for us.
Yeah.
Now, that's not going to happen in somebody's physician's office
Yeah.
building, but collectively it can. I mean, whether it becomes what towns are moving towards, or I think everyone should be composting their organic material. I think collectively a medical office building, particularly attached to a health system, should start looking at composters, because there's technology today coming out of India that can turn food into fertilizer in 24 hours.
Hmm.
24 hours. Now you've
Wow.
got waste to value.
Yeah.
You got a fertilizer you can interface into the natural landscape of the environment. To be quite frank with you, Carl, there is no such thing as garbage. There's no such thing as trash anymore. We
Hmm.
can't think that way. So we have to biologically, we have to reuse as much as we possibly can.
Hmm.
Um, Look at the problem with cars. I mean, the used car market, it's frightening. There are cars. We're not even recycling the metal. Like
Yeah.
you think they take the metal from old cars and make new cars. That's just not happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So put yourself in the shoes of a private practice, smaller mid-sized practice, whether they're
Sure.
attached to the health system or, so you start doing this, and like any initiative, especially if you call it an initiative, eventually you wane a little bit. Um, you see other people not doing it, like that you think they ought to. How do you stay motivated when you're trying to do this and it looks like the rest of the world is just, blowing it off?
Well, to be frank with you, the rest of the world isn't blowing it off. I
Okay.
think we see more of that happening, I think, here in America. But I'll tell you that you know, airports right now are trying to wrestle with this. You can imagine how much waste comes out of an
Mm,
airport. It doesn't matter to me the size, it's the attitude, to your point. And when you think about landfills, and I'm going to give you an example, the Fresh Kills landfill on Staten Island in New
mhm.
York City is, in fact, the largest thing man has ever made since the beginning of time. I hope you heard what I
That is
just said.
that is not a proud. I
It's
don't know.
larger than the China Wall. If you were to scoop up the Fresh Kills landfill and put it on top of Yankee Stadium, it would look like a golf ball on a tee. You'd see it from space.
Wow.
So we're morally obligated to incentivize ourselves, because this climate change issue is very real. We're heating up the atmosphere. And believe me, every time we ram this stuff down Mother Earth's throat in the form of some landfill, it affects our planet. And we all have children and grandchildren. This is a very dramatic problem. So, how and why someone needs to be incentivized to act appropriately around trying to reduce waste volume makes me scratch my head. But if I were the owner of some practice and realized that what I don't throw away, I don't pay for, and I could reduce my costs by 50,
Yeah.
I would certainly motivate my staff to act appropriately. And I would lace that with a moral obligation around caring for our planet. And they're in the business of healthcare, and this is healthcare for the planet. I'll tell you, the American Hospital Association is 150% behind this movement. And the only thing standing in our way is humans.
Hmm.
Human
Yeah.
behavior, it's really tough. It's
Yeah.
really tough.
Yeah.
And I believe we're not going to get 100%, but I'd like to get 80%.
Sure.
And you can do that.
Yeah. So maybe you just answered it, but a follow-up question is, it's good if it's good for business, right? Do well by doing good.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
why is keeping up with sustainability, in your opinion, also good for business?
Uh, that's a huge question with a huge answer. So I'll start by saying, no, I'll start by
Can we
saying
bite
that,
size it a little bit?
yeah, I'll do my best.
I know.
Th- there's uh, there's a contingent in the world that is relying on the enormity of huge companies, Delta and Kaiser Permanente and Google and Apple. Why does Google and Apple seem to be very successful at this? Their culture is just ingrained in this, right?
Mhm.
They buy appropriately, they act appropriately. So we know it's possible. And in fact, airlines are dying to do something good because their customers are saying, "What are you doing? Why are
Mhm.
you giving me plastic water bottles? Why?" So there's a demand, right? So we've got to satisfy the customer. And the data around how we're negatively impacting our environment, this is just science. It's absolutely real. So from a waste perspective, what you don't throw away, you don't pay for. With Mount Sinai in New York City, we've saved them $9 million. $9 million is a big chunk of change when you
Mhm.
think about garbage. This
Yeah.
is just stuff you just throwing it away,
Mhm.
and to reduce that cost by $9 million is significant. So, and we've done that at Yale and Columbia, and
What percentage of their total garbage spend, I guess, is 9 million about?
well, it's of the total spend of the organization,
Yeah.
or just the waste budget.
I guess the waste budget, whatever the
Well,
relevant comparator
it
is.
really depends. I mean, I've had smaller hospitals spend more money than bigger hospitals.
Okay.
It really depends. That's a good question,
I
and
mean,
I get it.
really, the question behind the question is, should people look for like a big chunk of change, or is it like, you're like rounding errors, I
A
guess?
big chunk of change.
Okay. Like you
Hey,
could see it.
let me answer the question with my own experience. 36 years ago, when I came to a healthcare CFO or COO and tried to pitch them on how we need to save the environment, the conversation would last about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But if I said to them that I could reduce their cost by 50%, they hired me immediately,
Yeah.
right? Immediately. And
Yeah.
I have to give the credit to the money back then, because it was the only way for me to sustain my business and be successful. If I was saving you money, you were hiring me. And just because the subject was waste, they didn't care. I'm saving you money. But today, it's a very different conversation. To
But
your point,
what's interesting though is, you talk to any private practice, especially those that rely primarily on insurance. Insurance reimbursements are not going up, right? Or if they are, they're
oh,
barely going up. So if you can find
yep,
some new way you've never looked at before to reduce your expense, I mean,
why
why
not?
wouldn't you look at it, right? This is a whole new way, probably for
Uh,
most people.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
Carl, it gets back to making significant changes in your purchasing and behavior, and realigning receptacle dynamics, understanding you're not making garbage, finding new homes for either recyclable material or taking your reusable container back home and not buying plastic water bottles. You think these things are little tiny changes, but they're big changes. And when you put them all together and you can reduce your disposal cost by 50%, you hit a home run.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Um, Man, as you've said it and I've said it, we could have a whole series right on this. I mean, it's such a massive topic.
It's
Here at Practice
huge.
Care, I know, but here at Practice Care, we try to keep it a little more bite-sized. We're sort of a big bite today, but it's a big topic and an important one. There's two wrap-up questions I ask every guest. First one's kind of loaded because of what we're talking about, but is there anything you think I should have asked you in the context of, say, you know, waste reduction, sustainability for small practices that I just didn't think to ask you?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered the big pieces of the puzzle.
Okay.
Um, but I do want to make myself available to your listeners,
Yeah.
because I'm a very authentic person when it comes to this. And there may be people who are either challenged or question their ability to do some of this. So you can have them email me or call me, and I'm happy to help them.
Yeah, we've got contact info. One of them's your website. So we'll just say, put in, go to the website, fill out the contact form and say, I heard you on
Absolutely.
Practice Care and I've got some questions. Um, the other wrap-up question I ask is, so we've caught a listener's attention and like, you know what, this guy's making sense for all sorts of reasons. I just don't know where to get started. So, I mean, we've given we've given some practical tips, but are there any other simple things that a practice, think about a busy staff, a busy provider, et cetera, but any simple things they could do to get started on this?
Yeah. So I would love the office manager of every one of these practices to walk into their kitchen, because they all have a little lunchroom and they all have a little kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of look around, open the refrigerator and look at all the things that are in there that really you can do without. Plastic water bottles. How about that Keurig machine? Oh, this one really gets me, right? The coffee machine with the little pods.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of insane, because you're making one cup of coffee and you're making one pod, and you're making so much waste relative to one cup of coffee. I want everybody to know that they make reusable pods that you
Mm.
can fill up with your own ground coffee, make a cup of coffee, empty that coffee grounds into your compost, or take it outside or dump it in your garden, wash it and use it again, and stop buying all those little pods that just make problems in the world in terms of waste. So the challenge is to walk into your kitchen and look at what we can do. Stop
Mm-hmm.
using disposable coffee cups. Stop. Just make an inventory and have a meeting and put your best foot forward. And
Yeah.
listen, I'll tell you something that'll put a smile on your face. If anyone out there doesn't know where to start or how to do this, just talk to one of your kids, because your kids are really understanding this
Mm-hmm.
really well, and they are holding us and our feet to the fire, because this world is theirs at some point, and we've got to do a better job.
Yeah. I'll throw another one out there. Take a
Yeah,
look at what you spent. So we're recording this, I said, in January. So take a look at what you spent last year on waste disposal
one hundred
and just say,
percent.
what if we knock that number down by 40%? Would that
Oh
be
my
interesting?
goodness,
Right?
so doable. It's
Yeah.
so
That's just
doable.
running a report.
Why are you giving money to this garbage guy in a truck who's creating some degradation somewhere in some landfill in your hometown? I
Yeah.
mean, come on. We're all smart people. Stop doing that.
Yeah. And I want to leave people with this. Um, there's a gigantic floating plastic island somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, right? How big is it up to?
Oh my God. Miles and miles and miles. Probably 20 miles in size.
20 miles. It's probably
Yep.
more or less an oval or a circle. So a 20
Yep.
mile island that's only getting bigger. And it's all
Yep.
plastic waste, right?
Yep. That is
So
true.
it's not getting smaller, folks, unless we can stop it from getting bigger, I suppose. Somebody's going to have to go out there and collect it, but we can certainly stop it from making bigger and do all sorts of other good things in the process. Tony, my God, thank you for coming on. This has been such an eye opener. Um, really some good practical stuff that anybody can do, no
Everybody.
matter how big or small or whatever, you think you are, you can make an impact to you and to the planet. How much better does it get? So thank you for coming on.
It doesn't matter what you do. It's who you are,
There you
honestly.
go. There you go. So, like I said, we're going to get the contact information that you provided into the show notes for your episode. So anybody wants to contact you, if you have questions, he's offered to give him a call, set that up. So it's another way to get a hold of you. So thank you for doing that. A couple of other points before we wrap up. First, if you're someone like Tony or I and you serve private practice owners and you've got some experience you want to share on their behalf, or if you're a private practice owner yourself, you've got some experience on the business side of private practice you think your peers will benefit from. Either way, we want you to come on Practice Care so you can tell the world about it. In the show notes for Tony's episode and every episode, there's a link, a couple of clicks. Tell us what's on your mind so we can get you scheduled as soon as possible. And lastly, we are on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, just about every major platform, and we do a new episode every week. The best and easiest way to stay up to date is to subscribe. So please do so if you have not. And that way you'll get notified when every new episode goes live. Thanks very much. And until next time.